Let's make an app in 10 minutes with Svelte and Backpack. First, I'm going to create a new folder called Fruits because my app is going to just store a list of my favorite fruits. Now, I like to do front ends in Svelte. You can use anything you want, but for me, it's going to be Svelte. So we'll paste this line in here. And the name of my app is going to be just Client because I'll have a client app and an API app. Let's cd into client and install our dependencies. And now we can run our Svelte app. So let's go up here and check it out. Sweet, we have a Svelte hello world. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of all that hello world stuff. So here's app.svelte. Get rid of all that. And there's also a line in main.js that passes in the world part. We can get rid of that too. So now we should have a totally blank Svelte app. I'm going to open up DevTools. So my app is going to be a form with an input. And it's also going to have a submit button. Add fruit. And that's basically my interface. Okay, pretty good. We also want to see the list of the fruits that I've added. So for now, we'll just put figs. And that's basically the app right there. So we want to make this stuff work. Let's start by making an array of dummy data. Let fruits equals, come on now, array. And each fruit is going to have a name property, bananas. And we'll make another one. Call this one apples. Cool. Now we need to loop through this. So Svelte gives us this handy each template tool. Fruits as fruit. And close that each. Then we'll change this hard-coded to actually show us the name property of the fruit. Let's see if that works. And it does. Okay, great. Now let's make the form actually submit the value and add it to the array. So each time we submit, the first thing we want to do is prevent the default so that the form doesn't really submit. We'll call a function named addFruit, which we haven't made yet. So let's go make it. Function addFruit. And we're just going to reassign this array. So it'll be a new array with the elements of the current array plus this new object with a name property set to whatever is the new fruit. Now we haven't declared that yet, so let's declare it. Let new fruit. And then we also want to bind that to the input. So here's our input right here. Let's go ahead and bind that value. Bind value equals new fruit. Okay. One other thing, when we add the fruit, we want to clear that value of new fruit because we don't want the input to display the thing we just added. Well, let's try that and see if it works. Let's add figs. It works. Now that's awesome, and our app is working perfectly. This is exactly what I wanted, but if I refresh, it all goes away because I'm not persisting it to a database. Let's get rid of these default values to start with. And let's make sure it still works. Figs, apples, it works. So we need to add a backend. We've got our client, we need an API directory. So let's open a new terminal here. And this is a kind of cool new feature of NPM. You don't have to have anything installed. If you type what I'm typing right now, it will do the same thing on your machine. NPM init backpack. Oops, I forgot though. I need to go up a level because I want it to be right next to client, not in it. So npm init backpack. And that's going to pull everything down for a boilerplate API. And it uses the parent directory as the default name for the database. That works fine. And it's all done, so we just hit enter to start the server. Okay, it says it's listening right here. Let's command click that and see if it actually is. It is. So we get status 200, and the data object just says message that it's successful, and there's no errors. So this is perfect. What we need to do next, though, is if we want to actually use this to save fruits, we're going to need to create a model for fruits. So we'll cd into the new API directory, and we'll run this npm script that Backpack comes with called model. And we just supply the name of our new model. This is going to generate 3 files for us. It created models fruit.js, routes fruits.js, and tests fruits.http. We won't worry about that last one just now, but let's open up the API directory and see what those files are that it generated. Notice in the API directory we have models and routes. Those are the 2 important ones right now. Let's look at routes first. If we look at fruits.js, and by the way, Backpack comes with users and user auth baked in. And this is the new one that we just added. So we got all this code that was just generated for us. I'm going to fold that so that it's less distracting. We get 5 endpoints here out of the box. It gives us these 5 endpoints. Now this is just a code generator, so you can do anything you want to this file. You could write it from scratch instead if you want. The routes that are here are just a handy starting point. So the one that we're going to worry about initially is post, because we want to be able to post a new fruit to the database. So let's close that. That's the routes. Let's also look at the model. In this one, we have to make a change because we need to add a schema for our fruit. Our schema is pretty simple. It's just a name, and that name is a string. So we have literally, after installing Backpack, modified 1 line in 1 file, and now we have all these endpoints for our fruits. Now to send requests to the API server, you could use fetch. That's kind of the standard way of doing it. With Backpack, there's an even better way, which is Backpack fetch. So let's install that module. Install Backpack fetch. And then we need to import it. The API module from Backpack fetch. All right. Now that we've got that, we can go down here. We don't want to just modify this array in memory. We want to actually talk to the server. So that's going to be an async function. And we'll set the response to api.post. And that takes 2 arguments, the endpoint and the payload. So the endpoint is going to be http : localhost, okay, localhost 8100. It's hard to code and talk at the same time. /API/fruits. And then the next one is the payload, which is name and new fruit. Cool. Now you might notice this is kind of a lot to type every single time you want to make a request. So there's a very handy feature here. We can just supply the endpoint part of it. And for the base URL of our API, you can just set that 1 time. And if you do this early in the life cycle of your app, then for everywhere else in your app, this will always remain set. You don't have to do this on every module or anything like that. Cool. So let's see if that works, and we'll just console log the response so that we can see it. Let's give it a try. I think we might want to run both of these, and we'll run the API server too. Okay, figs, and we see the response right here. We get our data object, which has the ID and the name that we just added, and also timestamps. Error is null and status is 200. So it's working. But we don't see anything in the list because we haven't tied this array of fruits to what's actually there. We need to do that. So let's do update list, and it's going to be the same kind of thing. We'll get the response from API, in this case get, and all this takes is the endpoint. There's no payload for a get request. And let's go ahead and set that value to fruits. So it's going to be the response data property. We'll go to fruits. And we're going to want to call this function initially when it loads. And we'll also probably want to call it here right after adding. We'll want to update the list again to show the new thing we just added. So let's try that. Okay, right away we see everything that we've added before. And maybe we'll want to add some more bananas. And so this is all working. So our app is now working perfectly. And if you look at what we've written, besides, this is the front-end app itself, only a couple of lines to actually communicate with the API server. It's really not much code. And if you remember in the API code itself, we modified exactly one line in one file. And that's all it takes to make a JAMstack app using Backpack as the API.